Now that you've had a few days to familiarize yourself with Photoshop on the computer, and you know about layers and how they work, let's look at some fun things that you can do in Photoshop CC. So I'm going to show you a few of my favorite things that you can do. One thing that you're going to want to do in order to do a lot of the things that you see in Photoshop is being able to remove something from its background. So we're going to look at this picture of a horse and we're going to remove him from his background and then play around with him a little bit. Okay, so first we have to select the horse. This tool right here, the fourth one from the top, is called the Quick Select tool. And this is a good tool to start with for selecting the horse. And what you would do is you would just click and drag and you'll see the selection, or sometimes they call those marching ants. And you'll just click and drag that along the horse. And I went ahead and I did a selection previously, so I'm going to go ahead and load that just for the sake of time. All right, and this is the horse selection, and say OK. All right, so I have a selection made, and you'll notice it's going around the horse, but in the areas where there's the mane and the tail, where you've got these little hair-like things coming off, it's really hard to make a good selection. So the first tool I want to show you is this Select and Mask. This used to be called Refine Edge. So if you are used to an older version of Photoshop, it's the same thing as Refine Edge. And in order to get that, you have to be on a selection tool. So notice no matter which selection tool I'm on here, that's a selection tool, you'll have the option for Select and Mask. Now, if I move off of that and go to a different tool, Paintbrush, I cannot do that. So you need to make sure you're on a selection tool. Go ahead and click Select and Mask. And over here, you can play with the transparency, and this is just going to show you more of the background or less of the background. So the higher I go on this, the less of the background I can see and the more of my actual horse I can see. I want to see some of the background as I'm doing this. We can look at edge detection, so pull that down, click Smart Radius, and I'm going to move this over just slightly, not too much. This is basically telling Photoshop to look 2 pixels out around the entire selection to see if I missed anything. And so that's a good thing to do, but you don't want to go too far with that. Otherwise it's looking way out here in the grass. And my selection was good enough that I don't feel like I need to look that far out. Okay, these things, smooth, feather, contrast, and shift edge, I use occasionally, but again, you would use these minimally, and we're not going to use those today. So I want to look to the other side, to the left side. Okay, and this second tool down from the left is the Refine Edge brush tool. I also have a magnifying glass. So let me zoom in. We'll start with the mane. And we're trying to get a better selection of these little hairs that got left out. And that's what this tool helps you to do. So basically, I'm going to extend this edge out. I'm telling Photoshop, look out here to see if I missed anything. And it's going to try to detect that horse's mane from the background and allow that to show. Okay, so that looks a lot better. I have a lot more pieces that I was missing before on that horse's mane. I just want to check the top of his head here, and that looks pretty good. Okay, so let's go over to the tail, which I think needs a lot of work. Okay, and so we'll do the same thing. All right, so that looks like a pretty good selection. So I'm going to zoom back out. And what I'll do is, now I need to tell Photoshop how I want to output this. So right now it's outputting to a new selection. Instead of doing that, we'll go ahead and output it to a new layer and say OK. Okay, so this horse is now on its own new layer, minus the background, and I can turn the background back on. Now one thing, if I turn my new horse layer off, you'll notice that there is still a horse on that background layer, and I need to get rid of that. I basically want the horse on just this grass layer so that I can move the horse around and do things with it. So I'm going to use a different selection tool for that, and this is called the lasso tool. And I don't need to make such an exact selection. I just can go around this very loosely. And I want to tie in right where I started. So I have a loose selection around this original horse. So you'll want to go to Edit, Fill. And then in this fill window, you want to make sure that it's on Content Aware and say OK. And what that does is Photoshop's going to look inside that selection and remove what's there and fill in what it thinks it should have. And this is an amazing tool, really. Before they introduced this tool in Photoshop CS5, you had to do a lot of work to do something like that, and it took hours and hours, and so this made it really easy and really does a nice job. So now I can turn my horse on, and you'll notice my horse is there now, except he's not on the background. So I can go to the Move tool and I can move that horse wherever I want. Maybe I want the horse up here. Okay, so wherever it is you decide you want that horse, you can now move it. So far I've showed you the Select and Mask and also the Content Aware Fill. Now I want to show you what's called the Puppet Warp tool. So while I'm on the horse layer, I want to go to Edit, and I'm going down to Puppet Warp. And this is a fun tool to play around with. Okay, so with the Puppet Warp, you want to first start by just clicking and creating little pivot points. And these little pivot points will allow me to move these things around like a puppet. Okay, so with the pivot points, now I can go back and I can drag any one of those points, and I can drag and change what this horse is doing, maybe the way his legs are moving or whatever it is I want to do. Okay, so this is a really fun tool to play around with. It can get a little crazy. We don't want to distort him too much because we want him to look like a horse. And we can move his tail a little bit. Maybe add another point here. I don't know what this is. This is something the program's doing, a little glitchy thing. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Okay, so that's that. I need to go up to the Tool Options panel and click OK. Now, if I go to my history, if you want to see the difference, it was from that to that. Okay, so little subtle puppet warp moves. All right, now I want to show you what's called the Spot Healing tool. That's this tool right here. And I'm going to go to a picture of a young lady who has a little bit of acne here. I'm going to show you how great this tool is for removing this type of thing. So you're going to click on that Spot Healing tool, go over to the spot in question that you want to remove. This works great for skin, basically blemishes, anything that's not perfect. They use this a lot for magazine covers and that type of thing. So get your Spot Healing tool about the size of what it is you're trying to remove so that it fits nicely around it. By the way, to make this bigger and smaller, I am using the bracket keys, the right bracket and the left bracket. So left bracket will go smaller, right bracket will make it larger. This also works on the brush tool and many other tools where you're sizing it. And I find this to be really useful rather than coming up here and sliding the size back and forth. Because when it's on the image itself, you can actually see how big or how small you need it to be. All right. All right. So again, just around that, the size that you need, and you just click. And miraculously, that blemish is now gone. Okay. And you can get really crazy with this. I see she's got a couple little tiny freckles here. Get rid of those. That one on her neck. Okay, so that is the magic of Photoshop. A little bit of redness there that you could get rid of. Okay, so that is the Spot Healing tool. And finally, I want to show you the Liquify tool. So I got a picture of this adorable baby here. If you go to Filter, Liquify, I'll show you what you can do. A couple things you can do in here. You can actually do a lot of things in here, but we're just going to show you a couple things. So I'm going to zoom way in on this adorable baby. I'm first going to start with the Bloat tool, which is this one. And I'm going to enlarge this baby's eyes. Big eyes these days, you see this all the time. So it's kind of become a popular thing. I've even seen stuffed animals with giant eyes. So we can bloat these out a little bit. Just by one click. You want to make sure you get the size right and you get it centered. Okay, so big baby eyes. Now the other thing is if you come over here to the Face Aware Liquify, this is new in Photoshop CC, and this is a pretty amazing thing. So you have eye size where you can make these bigger or smaller. Okay. Eye height, eye width, and then this is eye distance. So you can move them further apart, closer together. The nose, you can make it lower or higher. You can make it wider or narrower. And this one I love, on the mouth. You can give that baby a cute smile. Okay, and there's other things in here that you can play with, but I wanted to show you that. So that's a really fun tool. So we're going to go ahead and say okay, and there is our new baby with big eyes and a cute little smile. And we can go back to how the baby looked before, how the baby looks now. Okay, that is it for today. Please let me know if you have any questions, and make sure you review the notes and take that quiz.